The wind howled like a wounded animal through the Rockies that night. Snow battered the small town, cutting it off from the world. On the edge of the highway where most tourists passed without even slowing down stood the weather-worn diner. Its neon sign flickered against the whiteout. Ray's place. Inside, a man in his late 30s was wiping down the counter for what felt like the 1,000th time. His name was Ray Dawson, a single dad, an Army veteran, and the owner of this nearly forgotten diner. To most passers-by, it was just another roadside spot with burnt coffee and stale pie. But to Ray, it was all he had left after life had stripped him bare. His wife had died young, the military had left him with scars, some visible, some not, and raising his little daughter Emma, now 8, was the only reason he kept pushing forward. Ray wasn't expecting customers that night. The storm was too fierce. Still, he kept the diner open because habits kept him sane. And then at just past midnight the sound of engines shattered the silence. Through the snow, headlights cut a jagged path. One by one, motorcycles rolled into the lot. Not just one or two but 15 Harley-Davidsons, the chrome muted by snow, their riders dressed in leather patched with skulls, flames, and the unmistakable Hells Angels insignia. Ray's stomach tightened. He dealt with rowdy travelers before but nothing like this. These were men the world whispered about with fear. He thought of Emma asleep in the back room and instinctively reached for the baseball bat he kept behind the counter. The door blew open, and the leader stepped in, massive, bearded, his eyes sharp as steel. "Storm's closing the road. We need shelter," he growled. Ray's voice was steady, but his heart pounded. "This isn't a motel." The biker stared him down. A long moment passed before the man finally nodded. "We don't need beds. Just warmth, coffee, maybe pie, if you got it." Ray hesitated. Letting them in meant risk. Refusing meant inviting anger from men who looked like they'd won more fights than most had lived through. Finally, with the soldier's calm, he opened the door wider. "Sit where you like." What happened next would change everything. For hours, the diner was alive with the clash of worlds. Emma peeked out from the back room, wide-eyed at the sight of tattooed giants laughing, slapping each other's backs, steam rising from mugs of coffee. The storm raged outside, but inside, Ray kept pouring cup after cup, frying eggs, slicing pie, and listening as the bikers told stories of roads, scars, and brotherhood. At first, tension hung heavy. Every move Ray made was cautious. Every laugh from the bikers carried an edge. But slowly something shifted. One biker noticed Emma's crayons scattered on a table. Without a word, he sat down and began sketching a motorcycle. Another pulled out a pocket knife and carved a tiny wooden angel from a stir stick, handing it to her shyly. By dawn, the walls that fear had built began to crumble. Ray realized something. Beneath the leather and the legends, these were men bound by their own code of brotherhood, loyalty, survival. Not so different from the soldiers he'd once fought beside. When the storm cleared the next morning, the bikers shook his hand one by one. The leader paused before leaving. "You treated us like men, not monsters." "Most wouldn't have." "You got our respect." He slipped something into Ray's hand, a card with a symbol of the club and a phone number. "If you ever need us, call." Ray didn't think much of it. Life returned to its slow rhythm. The diner, though, was still struggling. Bills piled up, and business trickled in only from truckers or the occasional lost tourist. He was weeks away from closing for good. Then, one Saturday morning he heard it. The rumble started faint, like distant thunder. It grew louder, heavier, until the sound rattled the diner's windows. Ray stepped outside and froze. 102 motorcycles lined the road. The Hells Angels had returned. Not 15 this time, but riders from chapters all across the state. They filled his lot, the shoulders of the highway, the street stretching beyond what he could see. Emma tugged his sleeve, her eyes huge. "Dad, you broken bar." They came back. The leader from the storm stepped forward, grinning beneath his beard. "You gave us shelter when you didn't have to. Now it's our turn." That day, the diner became the busiest spot in the Rockies. Bikers ordered everything on the menu. They tipped more than Ray had ever seen. Some rode back every weekend, bringing friends, spreading the word. Within months, Ray's place was no longer the forgotten diner on the side of the road. It was a landmark, a safe stop for travelers, a gathering place where stories were shared, where strangers became family. But the real change wasn't in the money or the fame. It was in For years, he'd felt like life had beaten him down, leaving him alone to raise his daughter in silence. That night in the storm reminded him of something he'd forgotten: the power of trust, of opening doors instead of closing them, of seeing humanity where the world only sees labels. As he locked up one evening, Emma curled against him, whispering, "Daddy, Mom would be proud." Ray's eyes burned, but he smiled. Because she was right. One small diner in the Rockies, one storm that changed everything, and one veteran who learned that sometimes, when you take a chance on others, the world answers back louder than 100 roaring bikes. The message for the video ending: compassion costs nothing, but it can change everything. Sometimes the people we fear most are the ones who can lift us highest.